Hey, welcome everybody. This is May 24th, 2026, and we're here and now with myself, Steve Struggle, and Dr. Abraham. How you doing there, Abraham? How's it going?
Better recovering from the side effects of medication. So I think my mind is coming back, to say the least.
Okay. All right. Well, we're happy that you're feeling better, and we hope that your progress continues with regaining your health.
Yeah, I think so. Even though I'm actually, like 78 years old now. Can't believe
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm
Right
a,
on.
a vegetarian, healthy man since 56 years. So that should help. So I'm here and now. Here we go.
Okay. So, it's a lot to talk about. Where would you like to start?
Well, I'd like to hear about Venezuela from you, but the immediate sort of, matter that just came down is the agreement that Iran has been presented with. That seems like it's viable. Let's have a look at it and do an analysis of it, and then we'll know.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, the 9-point deal is said to provide for an immediate, comprehensive, unconditional ceasefire on all fronts, including land, sea, and air. Doesn't mention Lebanon, though. Doesn't mention Gaza. Oh. A mutual
That's
commitment.
interesting because I
Yeah.
saw one this morning that had Lebanon on it.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
I heard that Lebanon was supposed to be included in the ceasefire, but like Israel's not in the negotiations here. This is just the United States, negotiating with Iran. So there's no Israel party involved in this negotiation. The United States is on its own, and it's put Israel to the side. So, the United States can come to an agreement with Iran to cease hostilities, but at the same
We'll
time,
keep on fighting.
it
Then
is,
Israel can go.
yeah, they're just dumping Israel over the edge, throwing them
That's,
overboard.
well,
So,
or maybe they're gonna keep Israel as their attack dog. Because I mentioned to you before, I don't see Israel ever had coming to any deal with Iran besides the smoldering ending of the. I don't see them ever being able to do it
yeah,
because they've murdered too many people. See, they've been the aggressor too much.
yeah,
And the United States also cannot directly deal with Iran because they're aggressors. They have to, in my view, pillow pillow or comfort or disguise their aggression with an agreement.
yeah.
If
Well,
Pakistan and other countries weren't involved in this conversation, you just have blockade and war like you have in Cuba. There's no one stepping up to the plate to Cuba. Not one. Show me one and I'll shut my mouth.
hmm,
Okay? On this one, the Arab countries in the Gulf, they are U.S. allies, yes, but they need to get this kind of thing taken care of. They're losing too much money.
yeah,
They're losing a lot of money. Okay?
yeah,
So, they're willing to negotiate because they need to get their oil moved. They can't be getting their airfields bombed.
yeah,
Cuba, who would do that for Cuba? Not even Lula. I'm sorry. It
yeah,
bothers me.
yeah.
Anyway, you're right. Continue. I'm sorry. Continue, please. Continue. I'm sorry.
Uh, yeah, you're right. Like for the United States, this is an economic matter,
Yeah.
and we're into like this, you know, Israel's strategy of an existential, confrontation with Iran, in which, they sought to carve up Iran into various, small provinces, granting recognition for each one of them as a sovereign, state, like
Oh,
Kurdistan,
no.
in the north and
Mhm.
whatever.
Yes.
But
Yeah, yeah. Go on,
Didn't work.
please.
Didn't work. The Iranian people came together. Even the secularists, are supporting the government of Iran now when they were out demonstrating against it in the first place. No, everything has changed there now. It's an existential, struggle between Iran and Israel. And the Iranians are not giving up. And the Israelis, who knows? But in any case, they're not in the driver's seat here. Trump even announced, that what he tells Netanyahu to do is to be done. Like he's not, I think he got pissed off, that Tucker Carlson was uh, putting down, Trump as a figure manipulated by Netanyahu. A lot of other, even leftists, are saying that too, even though it's not true. So Trump, got pissed off, because his ego was being sort of undermined, so he had to make an announcement that it was he who dictates to Netanyahu, which is true because, when they started to just immediately after the ceasefire, when Israel was bombing Beirut, and, like Trump, announced, that he had called up Netanyahu and told him to cease and desist bombing Beirut, never mind about the South. And he did. Hasn't been bombed since. So this demonstrates, like what the relationship of power is. And the relationship of power is the United States of America is obviously more powerful than the state of Israel, even though some people would like to say, usually right populists and now left populists are saying that it's Israel that's, leading the United States around by the nose
Well,
or by the tail, so to speak.
that isn't true. You know,
But it's not true.
it's not
And
true.
there's
Right?
further proof, coming down here. Okay, next point. A mutual commitment not to target military, civilian, or economic infrastructure. Now, this is an agreement between the United States bases, and Iran. Nothing about Israel here, nothing about Lebanon. So, it's expected that the war with Lebanon, between Israel and Lebanon, is going to continue. And the United
That's
States
a
is leaving Israel on its own, subject to Hezbollah missiles, which are coming down and cannot be stopped. Okay, point three. An end to military operations and a halt to the media war. What's this media war? Like the social, you know, tweets that Trump, sends out, in place of negotiations. Like there's no more State Department. The Secretary of State is never heard from. It's only Trump, Trump mouthing off all the time. Okay, next. Commitments to respect sovereignty, territorial integrity, ooh, and non-interference in internal affairs. Whoa, they're giving up on regime change. Yes. Yeah, they have no chance there. Okay. Guaranteed freedom of navigation in the Arabian Gulf. They call the Persian Gulf the Arabian Gulf here. The Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman. Uh-huh. Okay, freedom of negotiations, but not for free. Because Iran is setting up an agreement there, even passed a law for setting up an administration to govern the passage of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, what's key about that agreement, about that law from Iran, is that it's a negotiated agreement, an international agreement with Oman, which has control over the other half of the Gulf of Oman in its territorial waters of 21 kilometers. So, like and non-interference in internal affairs. Internal affairs means, Iranian and Omanian control over the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so they're conceding that in concealed language here. Next, guaranteed freedom of navigation in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. Okay, a joint mechanism to monitor implementation and resolve disputes. A joint mechanism. Why don't they refer to the United Nations? They're trying to set up another mechanism.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to talk about one day because it appears to me that a lot of this stuff really, I mean, should be in the UN. So it kind of has some backing. Not that I'm a UN kind of guy, I'm not. But when you have these little side deals and
Yeah,
nobody is really ratifying it but the side deal,
yeah,
it can go awry in a minute. And then where's the accountability? There isn't any.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If it was, a deal that's, ratified by the United Nations General Assembly or Security Council, then if one side or the other breaks the deal, then sanctions, international sanctions can be imposed upon that party. But in this case, a joint mechanism. This is like, Trump trying to set up, the Freedom Coalition that fell apart, after one day when Saudi Arabia said no way. Okay, next. Negotiations on outstanding issues to begin within 7 days. So everything that the United States was insisting upon is left aside here. Okay, so they're not insisting upon negotiating what their demands were. Okay, fine. So they leave that to a side, and that doesn't bother Iran. Uh, Gradual lifting of U.S. sanctions against Iran doesn't in exchange for Iran's commitment to the terms of the agreement. Hmm.
May I say something about that, please? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. A few days ago, I was listening to Frontline Africa, a great program which all of our viewers should be watching. A great program about the Sahel. And they used this word gradual. I got so angry. They were talking about the deficit, the differential in pay between a foreign company who extracts gold from a Sahel country and the trainees or the management trainees from the Sahelian country. I was so angry because gradual means nothing. You know what means something? Every 2 months, we have, every 3 months, start on this day, on that day. We have a 90-day period. Then we do this. Next 90 days, then we do that. And if there is no numbering,
Right.
no schedule, that's just nonsense. I'm sorry. And
Mm.
I'm not knocking that Sahelian country for agreeing to this, but they'll never get, no, they won't. They'll never get the pay raises unless you
Mm.
put it in writing and it's, some kind of contract. So this thing here about gradual, I'm sorry. I'm
Mm.
sorry. Hopefully I'm wrong. Okay. But I don't think I will be.
Yeah, I
Sorry
think
to
you're right
interrupt you.
there. Yeah. Look, I was just reading it, literally, but gradual lifting of U.S. sanctions. Huh, well, it doesn't mean much, does it?
It
Because
sure doesn't. No.
and also there's no mention made of the internationally deposited funds that belong to Iran.
Yeah.
Is that going
Where's
to
their
be?
money?
Yeah,
Where's the money?
yeah, where's Iran's money? Like it's not even mentioned here. So this is not complete. Reaffirm compliance with international law and the UN Charter. Those are only words, that's Iran, asking for compliance with international law, so they won't be attacked again. But the United States didn't recognize international law in the UN Charter before, so why should they do so again? So this agreement, whoa, dangerous. Yeah. But, they don't talk about the Iranian allies, what are called the terrorist proxies, which are the revolutionary forces in other countries that look to Iran for support. No mention of that. So U.S. has backed off on that. They thought that they were going to shut down, all the revolutionary movements in the Western Orient.
Forget about that. That ain't
No,
happening.
no, that's not happening. Like it's
That's
confirmed
not
here. It's
happening.
not even
Okay?
mentioned. So forget it. Yeah, yeah,
That's not happening. The only way you can, yeah, that's not going to happen without the defeat of those movements themselves. Those movements are not going to, I mean, that's just not. But the fact that they can say, they have the arrogance to say that when the United States does what it wants with its proxies around the world just shows the double face, the two-faced, disgusting nature of U.S. imperialism and the Western imperialist system. You tell me what I can do, but you do what you want. Oh man, hypocrisy,
yeah,
straight hypocrisy. That's all
yeah,
it is.
yeah. Okay, so like it's a limited agreement. If Iran's willing to agree to this 9-point deal, okay, it's up to them. If they don't,
It is up to them. You're right.
like if they don't think that it's worthwhile to suffer the consequences of calling for a greater degree of independence but nonetheless, their integrity, territorial integrity, is being recognized here. Non-interference in internal affairs. No regime change is
But
allowed in. Okay, fine.
but Abraham, you know that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
The United States has never done that.
yeah.
I'm not
Well,
saying
yeah, we'll just
what
send,
I'm
Israel
not telling the
to what
Iranian people how
they've
to
done.
run their business, but come on, come on.
Like Israel's not in part of this deal, so Israel doesn't have to respect any
And
of these.
I'm telling you, there was a version that came out last night, and again, maybe one of those versions that someone put up there and added something to it. But Lebanon was in that version I saw last night, and interesting, I can't find it now. So it's interesting we can't find this. It may have been a fake version, but Lebanon was okay. Hold on a second. Here's I want to read. So I
Yeah, in
want
the
to read
previous
this.
agreement, the previous proposal for ceasefire, Lebanon was mentioned. Yeah, I saw that announced as well on.
Right, right. Lebanon was mentioned, so something
Yeah.
is going on with that with Lebanon, which isn't a good thing.
So,
Um,
in effect,
um,
it's sort of like has another aspect to it, because if Lebanon's not mentioned, that means that even though it says on all fronts, it doesn't mention Lebanon. So this would allow Israel to continue attacking Lebanon, would allow Hezbollah to continue attacking Israel. Because this agreement does not include those parties. They're not involved in these negotiations, no matter what it says here. By all fronts, what they are really referring to is Yemen, because they don't want the Strait of Bab al-Mandab to be closed by the Yemeni Houthis, Ansar Allah. And that's, why, the United States and Israel have not attacked Iran again and why they're agreeing to this, because they know that if they attack again, then the other strait is going to be closed, which closes down the Red Sea and closes down the Panama Canal, which, sinks, the international economy, 100%. So that's what I think this refers to, and the United States is trying to avoid, a shutdown of the Panama Canal. Sorry, not the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal at the end of the Red Sea there. So that's why
well,
the United
this
States to
I have
this.
something interesting here. I'm just finding Channel 12 in Israel, which is a pretty reputable channel, says the points of contention in the Iranian-American agreement. Israel demands a guarantee of freedom of military action against threats in Lebanon, and Iran refuses. Tehran demands immediate release of his assets now, and Washington refuses and insists on linking them to the final formula of the agreement. This is not in the announcement, what you just read. This is a news correspondent. Channel 12 is a camera. It's a pretty authoritative news channel in Israel, and so we should keep this in mind as we keep this story going. That it has been said on this channel that the assets will not be released until some final agreement is linked, and the final agreement will have to do with the nuclear issue.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking, this is me, I'm not a head of state, I'm not a negotiator in the state in foreign affairs. It seemed to me the whole agreement is going to go down on this kind of thing here.
Hmm.
Something's going to tie it up, and this could be Abraham, listeners, viewers. Remember about the Minsk II agreement. Why did the West and Ukraine sign, and Russia, unfortunately, they didn't know what they were. I'm not saying they know what they were doing, but they were tricked. They were tricked, right? And it was all done to give more time to ramp up the war.
Hmm.
Now, if there's a ceasefire, no war. What's the U.S. going to do? Make more tomahawks, right? Get
Hmm.
Israel ready. Make more weapons. Get everything ready.
Hmm.
Let's hope it doesn't happen. But
Hmm.
if past practice is a prediction of future practice, we should expect it. It says right here, Tehran demands the immediate release of its assets now, and Washington refuses and insists on linking them to the final form of the agreement. So Iran ain't getting nothing back. Sorry.
Hmm.
I hope
Yeah.
I'm wrong. Okay. Now, if
Hmm.
the Iranian people, if people in Europe, people in the United States, people in other in the Arab countries demand it, and stop working in the oil plants and raise the price of gasoline to $15 a gallon, then it might happen.
Hmm.
I'm just because I don't trust the United States, not because I don't trust. Basically, I don't like you. Just when the native people said white men speak with forked tongue.
Yeah. Uh,
Anyway,
so th this is only an agreement between the United States and Iran. It doesn't include Israel. So
that's
this means that, the war between Israel and Lebanon
it's going to
could
continue. Yeah,
continue. And Hezbollah came to the aid of Iran
sure
when
has. Yes,
Israel and the United States attacked Iran. So now Iran can come to the aid of Lebanon and attack Israel without violating this agreement here.
that's
I
very
don't
true, isn't it? There is a corollary to the agreement, which might in actuality help, or an unstated part of the agreement, which in actuality could help Lebanon. You're right. Very
think,
good.
yeah, because United States, doesn't, they use Israel. Israel, is willing to be used, by the United States, to attack the enemies of the United States. But the United States doesn't feel responsible for the defense of Israel necessarily. They use that as a sort of an excuse, for attacking Iran, etc. But when it comes to U.S. interests, that's takes priority over the interests of the state of Israel. And in this case, Israel is not mentioned, it's not included in negotiations, it doesn't count. Just like, Trump said, like he tells Netanyahu what to do. It's not the other way around. Okay, so that's that for this agreement. Now, this
Let's see.
confirms, the relationship between Israel and the United States. This is the Zionist lobby, the famous Zionist lobby that supposedly controls the United States of America. This is it, JINSA, the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, not of Israel, America, okay?
Oh, yes, they were in the news recently. They certainly were.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Hmm.
So, look at that logo up at the top there, like a little American star inside, like a Zionist star in blue on a American flag background. Okay, like our mission. Okay, the Jewish Institute for National Security of America is dedicated. No, dedicated, really. Okay. Dedicated to advancing U.S. national security interests in the Middle East. They mean the Western Orient, of which a critical pillar is a robust U.S.-Israel security relationship. Notice the U.S. first. Hmm. Jinsa believes that Israel is the most capable and critical U.S. security partner in the 21st century, and that a strong America is the best guarantor of Western civilization. Huh. You know, uh, Gandhi was once asked, what he thought of Western civilization. Gandhi
What do you
replied,
say?
Gandhi replied, when asked, like what he thought about Western civilization, Gandhi replied, that would be a good idea. Like as if, the West was not civilized, and it's not. There is, what is referring, Western civilization is code for Christianity, Protestant Christianity, Christian evangelicalism, the Western Crusade, Christian crusade, to occupy the best resource bases, in the Orient. Okay. Jinsa continues and says, it advances its mission by conducting both educational programs that build ties among American, Israeli, and other Middle Eastern partner military leaders, talking about Saudi Arabia here now, which is pivoting towards China at this moment, along with an in-depth research and actionable recommendations. Recommendations. That's, the lobbying to influence U.S. policy. They, state quite here openly that they're there to influence U.S. policy. They don't control U.S. policy. They have, like a certain influence, because they are an agency for the local power that can do things military things that the United States cannot do. So Israel acts as the arm of the United States of America. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, yeah. Okay, and you know the right-wing populist mentality considers, that the Zionist lobby, which is called by Mearsheimer the Israel lobby, even though, it's not Israelis, that are the constituents of the lobby in the United States of America. Israel doesn't exist within the United States of America. An Israel lobby, has to be something else. What it is a Zionist lobby, and not necessarily a Jewish Zionist lobby either, because the Zionist lobby is principally the Christian evangelical movement with that guy Hagee, who has an organization that is pro-Zionist. Now I can see it. Arno Rosenfeld, provided this. 24% of American Jews, he says, Jewish Americans actually, support replacing Israel with a binational state. And this is a record high by a lot. That means that it's increasing. In your opinion, which of the following would be the best resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Establishing one state that is neither Jewish nor Palestinian and includes Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza under a single government elected by Israelis and Palestinians. It's 24%. Okay, good luck, like elected by both Israelis and Palestinians. And what happens, when they each get, equal number of votes in the parliament, then they're in a deadlock. Doesn't work. But it is a pleasant sentiment, at the very least. But what is really required is a federation. I wrote a whole book to explain that, because a one-state solution doesn't work, because it doesn't include, for example, how are the Palestinian refugees going to be coming back? What about the right of return of the Palestinian refugees? Totally ignored, under such a paradigm. What is needed is rather a federation, which would allow for each national entity to have its own government in a symbiotic relationship, within a common society, but not a state, because state means a centralized authority in which one, national entity or another takes control of the state and uses it, to bludgeon the other national entity. Okay, so there's problems with that, but nonetheless, it's a nice sentiment. Okay, 24%, very nice. Next, Israeli annexation of the West Bank and Gaza that establishes a one state as the national homeland of the Jewish people and allows Palestinians to vote for their municipal leaders, but not vote for Israel's national government. This is what they call a two-state solution. This is, what the Zionist conception of recognizing Palestine, in the West Bank and Gaza is all about. And this is what the Palestinian Authority, is actually functioning as, just as a municipal government. 22%. Okay. But it's not the same as, the Zionist fanatics, who are in control of the government presently. Thirdly, establishing two separate states with their own separate governments, a Jewish state of Israel alongside an Arab state of Palestine. Okay, this is what's supposed to have happened, according to the Oslo Agreement, within, 5 years, after 1993, 54%, support this. Okay, Oslo Agreement has 54% support. Great. So how come the government, is so fascist? If this is what the sentiments of the, the Israeli Jewish public is. Jewish support. Okay, so this is a poll of Jewish Israelis, not all of Israelis. So the 23%, of Israelis who are Palestinian and Bedouin and Druze are not included here. So Ben Lorber, is a great journalist, and he works for Jewish Voice for Peace as well. He interviewed me in Nablus, in 2011, actually. Says there is an oft-repeated truism that most American Jews, or Jewish Americans as it should be, are pro-Israel, anti-Netanyahu, supposedly, making them look good. But today's poll shows that nearly one-fourth of all Jewish Americans do not support Israel as a Jewish state. In other words, are not recognizably Zionist. That's what I've been saying all along. Jewish people who do not live in the state of Israel are, in effect, non-Zionist because, Zionist ideology requires that Jewish people, go to live in the Palestine land, and take it over, on behalf of a Zionist state, which calls itself Jewish. They don't do it. In fact, it's the majority of the Jewish people who don't do it. 55% of Jewish people don't live in the state of Israel. They live elsewhere. There's more Jewish people who live in New York City than live in Tel Aviv. Okay? So they are non-Zionist. Furthermore, I'm told by someone who has seen the back-end data that this rises to nearly half of Jewish people under 35. Okay? Younger generations, which is the future, are already, like twice as advanced as the older generations. So Zionism is in a decline amongst, the Jewish diaspora. Within the large majority, 78%, who are not far right, which includes the total of those three categories up above, nearly 1 in 3 want a binational democratic state. Only half of Jewish Americans want a two-state solution, long assumed to be the dominant consensus. As well, past time to rethink our assumptions. Yeah. So, Jewish Americans have gone further than the Oslo agreements, calling for a two-state solution, which is even, the official position of the Canadian Foreign Office and also the official American position, but they never do anything about it. Okay, so that was very important to show you. Now, there's one more share that I want to show you. And I think I can find it here. That's the poll. It's the Times of Israel. UN agreement. Okay. Here, I'll give you this. Just to fill it out. See, this is the Jewish Bund, which was anti-Zionist, but pro-Jewish. Justice for the Jewish people. This is when they were standing up. This is the Antifa movement, the Jewish component of the Antifa movement. Okay. And yet the left, cannot understand this, not at all. They, any leftists, looking at this would immediately think, oh, this is Zionism. It's not Zionism. This is Bundism. And the Jewish people are not to be ignored. And the leftists, who do ignore the Jewish people are being reactionary. They're not leftists. And there's a big difference, in the pro-Palestinian movement between the two factions. One which is, anti-Zionist and pro-Jewish, another which is anti-Zionist and anti-Jewish. And the differentiation, has to be sharp. And I refuse to work with any such, populist, chauvinistic sentiment that denies the existence of the Jewish people and the Jewish right to self-determination, but not by denying the very same right on the part of the Palestinian people. It's completely different, than Algeria, in which the French colonialists, went back to their nation state. In this case, we have two people who are both oppressed in various ways, not by, the Jewish people, the Jewish Israelis are not being oppressed by the Palestinians, but the Jewish people who came to Palestine were oppressed in Europe by the Nazis, and they sought to escape. And no country would allow them to escape to, and even the British occupation of Palestine wouldn't allow the Jewish people to escape to Palestine either after 1939 in the White Paper. So it became, a matter of national survival to oppose all of that. Anyway, I can go on and on about that, but it should be pretty clear by this point. So, that's what I had to, to share today. And I'm sorry I missed, finding the last item that I want to show you, which was the Times of Israel, had a headline, a story about how Trump declared that it was he who was ordering Netanyahu around and not the other way around. And so I should find that, to confirm, that the left populist position of the Zionist lobby control of the United States of American foreign policy is ridiculous. So I'll find out for next week. In any case, like I can't remember where I put it. I still have to recover so much. I'm told that it takes 2 weeks, to recover from the side effects of the medication that I was taking. So I'm off of it, since 3 days only. So I should be better, by the next week. Okay, that's all that I have to offer you. Steve, do you have another report to make?
Yeah, I want to make a comment though about on what you were just discussing, and it flows into the story that began the week last week in the United States, which was a terrorist attack by two white supremacists, anti-Semites, anti-Muslim high school students in San Diego. And in the attack, which was carried out with weapons, guns, pistols, and I think pistols and rifles, I think. Um, Three Muslims were killed. The two men then left and did a double suicide. It was all live streamed, um, and they. I read their manifesto very carefully,
Hmm.
and their main targets were Jewish people.
Oh,
Their main targets were not Arabs. Actually, they only chose a Muslim mosque. I'm going to assume they did their surveillance and chose this place wantonly because most religious and schools that are Jewish are pretty much locked down 24/7.
yeah.
At least, at least, at least within the United States, you can't just walk into the mosque into the synagogue. You can't just walk into a Jewish school. And now most American schools are like that now also. But so they picked this place because it was a soft target. They considered it a soft target. Um, because the school had a lockdown procedure, the security guard who also died um, um, was able to alert people in the school part of the Mosque of San Diego. And that's why no students were killed. Because they had planned to kill everybody,
Mhm.
including the students. So the
Yeah.
point I was making to you is that even though they chose this as the face of their terrorist attack, the main enemies that they talk about are still Jewish people.
Oh,
And so yeah, their main focus of their manifesto. Um, they named the manifesto after the man Tarrant who killed 56 people uh, in a New Zealand synagogue a few years ago.
oh,
So they honored him by putting his name on their manifesto while they were carrying out an attempted mass murder in San Diego. So your point about I mean, perhaps a more extreme measure of what you're referring to. But those gentlemen had clearly an anti-Jewish agenda.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
if yeah, and then that hasn't come out too well in the press.
Huh. Yeah, because the press is pro-Christian evangelical. The standard Christian evangelical position, doesn't differentiate between Jewish and Arab Muslims. We're all Orientals, intruding into a Christian political space, which is called the West. And we don't have any legitimacy to be here. This is the Nazi position that
Exactly.
Jewish people,
Exactly.
don't have any right to be, like citizens. It's a definition of citizenship, that is based upon a theocratic criteria of being a Christian and having a baptismal certificate, which is considered equivalent, to citizenship uh, upon birth, which is not recognized, which is not possible for Jewish people. In fact, my parents are not uh, were not recognized, are not currently recognized, by Poland, by Poland as having been citizens, when they escaped during the occupation by the Nazis, and therefore I cannot apply for citizenship, to Poland because they deny that my parents are citizens, even though I proved that they were born there. Because Poland, operates, with the same criteria, including presently, which, considers only basically Christians, to be citizens, of Poland. And citizen, Christian, by Christian, they mean, Catholic Church, because that's the official church of the Polish nation state. Same thing, like, the Zionist nation state, same sort of exclusionary position, only this time, like it's excluding Jewish people instead of excluding Palestinians. Yeah, that's the way it is, still very primitive in the 21st century. That's the way it is. But it cannot last. This is, a fundamentally, bankrupt, obsolete, position. And the whole constitutional nature of the West has to change because of the heterogeneity of the population, which cannot be reversed, even though Trump is trying to reverse the demographic changes in the United States population by expelling the migrant population. But there's 11 million new migrants, who are not documented. And how many have they, expelled, from the United States so far? A few thousand, compared to 11 million. Well, forget it. That cause is lost. The United States demographic, character cannot be changed. And what are they going to do with the black population? 11% of the population. They want to expel all the black Africans back to Africa. you know,
Well,
black.
they're the let me stop sharing. The this program is basically based on a race war.
Yeah,
These people just want they want to have a war of genocide. That's what they want. A
yeah,
war of genocide against blacks, against Jews, against Arabs, against immigrants.
yeah,
And now Donald Trump, see, um, Stephen Miller supports that position actually. His special envoy on like immigration. He basically supports that, but he knows he can't say he wants a race war, so he has to say, well, we have a invasion. Same thing that they say.
mm,
They both agree on the great replacement theory
mm,
that immigrants are here to replace white people and take the white people's jobs. So
mm,
therefore, we have to get rid of them by any means necessary. And therefore, these groups are opposed to the Trump agenda. They just want to kill people. They just want to take them out. So
mm,
that is the strategic difference. The one group, the Trumpites, that wing of the fascist, that wing of the movement wants a political method, jailing, expulsion, uh, taking taking away rights,
mm,
even for the black people. That's why they're attacking voting so much, because
mm,
that was one of the main targets of the civil rights, of the Civil War, and the Civil Rights Movement, which is voting. And
Mhm.
for the migrants, just kick them out,
Mhm.
jail them, and kick them out.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody that doesn't fit into the paradigm of the white supremacist nation state, theologically, Christian, are considered to be criminals, because their presence is not desired. If they're not wanted, they must be there, without illegal authorization, and therefore, by definition, they are criminals. Okay, because they don't have any papers. Okay, and because
Exactly.
that's
And
they start on the migrants, they'll get to everybody else, afterwards, like the Nazis did.
eventually, right?
Yeah.
Eventually.
But
Um,
the papers that they're supposed to have, which legalize them, are being denied them because they've applied, to be immigrants to the United States of America. There is a process, to become an immigrant, But like if somebody, from a Spanish-speaking country, like applies, to be an immigrant to the United States of America, their application is not processed. They're left hanging there, for ages.
right.
Whereas, somebody from South Africa gets, priority immigration. They get
They sure do.
their
Yeah.
citizenship, within hours, like, and they get, a
Yeah.
special flight, to bring them over as well. Like this is
Well,
like
I think we'll see.
Musk.
I think I think you'll see. I can't say this. I can't say this because I've done a case study, but I would think that in all countries have a way to fast track migration. If quote they want you there, unquote, they'll find a way that you can stay there.
Yeah.
If they quote don't want you there, they'll find a
Mm,
way to kick you out. I mean, I think all countries, based on them being states, having citizen versus non-citizen, and migrants versus non, that kind of thing.
yeah.
So, the United States is simply, in my view, showing what states can do,
Yeah.
and its motivation is racism, and um yeah, this motivation is clearly just racism.
Mm,
And they have theories like the great replacement theory and other nonsense to give their racism and political movements some kind of ideological basis. They're
mhm,
coming to take our jobs, which is never the case because,
mm,
and that I mean that anyway.
yeah.
I want to mention that. I realize we're running low on time, so I can hold off on some of my articles until next week. It's okay. I
Okay.
know we're running low on time,
Okay.
but
Just to conclude your remarks, like I could back that up, and point out that Emma Goldman was deported from the United States of America on
there
that
you go.
basis, that she was an
There you go.
illegal
Yeah,
alien,
right, right.
illegal
Whenever,
alien from where? From Mars, like really. Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's something that even when we or if we choose to migrate out somewhere and migrate to somewhere, we're caught up in that paradigm. That word, even migration itself, allows states to say we're legal or illegal, which is nonsense.
Hmm.
And they do it. All states do it. All states can do it. Okay, I'll put it like
Yeah.
that. They
Yeah.
have because they are a state, and
Yeah.
that's what makes even the state, the body of states, something to. What powers can states have regarding the legality of a citizen of a human being?
Yeah.
It
Precisely.
just yeah. It's
It,
it's just yeah. I mean,
a
if I need
state
to
is,
go somewhere, it should be
yeah.
so. I mean, what's the problem? You got yeah. There's no place that's overcrowded that I know of. They all can. Some places don't. You might not want to go, but if you need to get there, you're either legal or legal. You're illegal or
Mm.
documented or undocumented, and therein starts the problem. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Well, the state
Okay.
form itself is a reflection of its economic base, of capitalism. The state is the capitalist form of organization.
Right.
The state is, in fact, operating as a private corporation in which its members are determined by the state and not by
So
the human presence. Like uh, it doesn't matter that you're born in the United States of America. You're not an American because you don't fit the definition of what an American is according to the state. And the state is,
Yeah.
Christian and white. So, like,
And all of this stuff that's going on, I still want to put it out here. I still want to suggest a book people read, and I don't have the author's name in my right here in front of me. Columbus and Other Savages and Other Cannibals.
yeah.
Columbus and Other Cannibals, because it tells you the real orientation of the American civilization, not the American nation, no, the civilization of America. And it was based on the theft of native land, imprisoning black people, and you know, the savagery.
And
Three.
replacement, that's the original replacement, campaign.
Thank you.
Okay. Columbus, comes in, with this terrorist gang and replaces all of the indigenous nations by genocide and
By
brings in
genocide.
the migrants, from Europe who couldn't find a job, in Germany. And so they come, to get free land. How does it become free? Because it was stolen.
It was stolen. Thank you.
Yeah. And
It
so the
was
whole
stolen.
American Midwest is majority German American, living on stolen land, which they got, by what was it? Like I don't know what the name of the procedure was. When everybody sort of rushes off, in a great wave of migrants, who come to claim, a patch of land, as their own for free, and this was given to them,
Free.
by the
For
American
free.
state. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
It
one day they're
wasn't
going to
like
break
it's
through.
free because you've been there a while. It's not because it's free because you're here and because this land evolved organically from this population. You have free land because you're part of the population. No, it's free because we stole it, we ripped it off, and that's that. Okay, if you don't
Yeah,
like it,
killed off the
well,
population so they couldn't come back. Yeah, for sure.
kill them off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Even
So
in New York, Wall Street was named, because that's where the wall was to keep the indigenous, native, population out of New York City, which was called New Amsterdam at the time, right? And that wall
yeah,
there was a
that's
separation wall, just like the wall between Palestine and Israel and the West Bank is a apartheid wall. Same thing. Wall Street is an apartheid wall, and it still exists. Anyway,
okay.
we'll take care of that. Okay,
Okay.
until next week then.
Thank you.
This is
I
here and
want
now.
everybody, please share the broadcast, send us your comments, and get out and get organized and fight back.
Yeah. Think, analyze, and act. That's the methodology here. Very good. Okay, thank you, Steve. This is
Thank
Dr.
you.
Abraheim. And we're here and we're going to stay here. And next week, we're going to speak with you again. Bye for now.